Hey guys. So, this is not for any enemies. Really not. Well, I don't know. Whatever. But, yeah, living is on vacation. I think I felt it. I hit a nice point of relaxation. I've been doing Sedona Method stuff today. I think this shirt might be a woman's shirt. I hope not. But I bought it at Walmart and it was like all the men's shirts were like $20 each or something. And then I saw these other button-down shirts and they were like, but it was like there was like sort of a doorway type thing between like, one part of the clothing aisles and another, and that had like, I guess, a little display or opening for clothes to be there on either side. But one side, it was, I think, closer to where the women's stuff was, and one was the men's. But these just looked like sort of nondescript, like button-down shirts. So I was like, well, because they were marked down to $5, and I was like, well, these look good. And it didn't. I don't think there were like women like pictured like next to them or anything. But in any case, the buttons go the other way. So, like usually, what is that? It between men and women's. The women's just have the buttons like fold over on the other side. I don't know. Whatever. This is not me finally doing some kind of like trans. Some kind of like, oh, the masculine and the feminine uniting, and then like some occult thing like that. Not intentionally. This is just a bargain. Anyway, yeah. So it's like, I think I hit a nice point of relaxation today. I've been doing the Sedona Method this morning pretty well. I've been getting a little back into the Sedona Method anyway, and this is not okay. I've been getting a little back into the Sedona Method, and crap, darn it. And it's been nice. I really like the Sedona Method. I think, I mean, it can be really helpful if you actually do it. It's so powerful, but and it just takes, it's just a little bit of dedication. I'd say that. It's like, crap. Yeah, this is a tough level. I don't know what I'm gonna do here. Oh. I got towards the end of it last night and then didn't quite make it. Hold on just a second though. So yeah, the Sedona Method, it just takes a little bit of doing. It's not even like that much. But like, I might even do well, no. See, I think a tendency that I tend to get into has been to like, not that it's not a good idea, but it's like, oh, okay, like, oh, this worked, and then, okay, well, let's schedule ourselves to do like that, a certain amount of time a day, or like blah, blah, blah. And I think that can work. But of course, then you're kind of just putting it out into the future. I don't know. It might be sort of like, anyway, this is a tough little jump here. Come on. Nope. See, look, it's like, you might say like, how would you even have time to do that? You can do it. Look. Nope. This game, like, you're on your fucking toes. Yep, you gotta hit that as like it's fucking coming down, and even then it's probably a little too late. Look, you gotta hit it. You gotta jump like real early. Yup. See? Oh boy. This isn't really the hardest level of Crash, but it's definitely. Let's just say like it's still like got Crash balls. Like, it's definitely like more balls than most games these days have. And so it's interesting with a Crash level because you can often look at it and say like, well, it doesn't seem like most games these days would go this far. Maybe like for the entire game. So like a little challenge in a crash level, it might be more challenge than you get in like towards like the end of most games. I'm thinking of like Metal Gear Solid 5 right now though. Now that's not that hard of a game, but there are definitely like sort of fun, challenging parts. Oh shit, are you kidding me? Whoa, wait. Do we have the fucking bird there again? Whoa, wait a sec. We don't have the effing bird there? Tell me we can make that jump. Oh boy. Does that bird come back? Oh good, thank goodness. Okay. Well, that was fortunate. Yeah, you know, man, I love Metal Gear Solid 5. I might be coming up on another playthrough of that game. That's one of my favorite games. It actually might be a top 5 for me. I really like that game because it's really good gameplay. But the game also, like, it feels like there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. And it has one of the best, I'd rather not even say much about it, but it has one of the best sort of, let's just say it has one of the best kind of like, oh shit, am I gonna die because it goes so low? No, okay. It has, let's say it has one of the best conceptual bases I've ever seen in a game. Like, the conceptual, what happens conceptually in Metal Gear Solid V is unbelievable. It's really cool. I notice, I say MGS-V, I don't say MGS-5. Peace Walker was MGS-5. You can check it out. But actually, I'd hesitate to actually tell you to look too much into it, though, if you haven't played it, because then it gets into spoiler territory. It really does. So yeah, you probably you might just want to like play the game before like looking into it, and then maybe you can fucking, damn it, bad jump. Maybe you could take my word for it. I mean, I'd hate to ask you to take my word for it until then, but it is MGS-V. It's not 5. A good little clue, though, and it's like Hideo Kojima sort of famously, you know, doing like little mental tricks and stuff. A little clue for that is that the previous numbered Metal Gear Solid games did not have Roman numerals. But suddenly it's V, right? Well, V is a letter. Not to mention that Metal Gear Solid V is all about language and stuff. But it's not even just like, oh, like a preponderance of evidence kind of thing. Like, it's actually, like, Peace Walker was actually a part of the main series after 4. And then let's just say that it's Metal Gear Solid V. It seems that way to me. But then I think really the numbers thing, that's a huge thing as well. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, Peace Walker V. What's W? Actually, let's see what Peace Walker is, because maybe they did a gematria thing anyway. So P is 7, Z is 8, because that's 26, so Z, Y, T, V, W, X. Z, Y, X, W. So 8, 7, 6, 5. So 7 plus 5 is 12, and then that's 3. So, oh. No, I guess it doesn't come out to 5, but still. But the gematria doesn't have to come out to 5 for Peace Walker to be the 5th Metal Gear Solid game. Which would make V 6. And V makes sense as 6 anyway, because it's It's sort of like, I don't know, whatever, doesn't matter. Makes sense as 6 for a lot of ways. Yep. Okay. Great. This is where we died before. These are some fairly normal jumping, not puzzles, but whatever. Yep, there we go, there we go. Oh, no. Bad, Matt. Fucking bad, Matt, darn it. Oh. At least we got the Buddha Booga again, and now we'll get a double Buddha if we make it. We may not beat this level. I don't know how long this stream's gonna be. It might be a shorter one. I just wanted to come on because I was kind of relaxed. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. And plus, I've often gotten into like little OCD things with these streams where it's like, you know, it's all riding, like, or basically it's just like anything can kind of, you can look at this, but it's like, oh, look at like this, but it's like, oh, you know, like, oh no. If I do another one, then it's like if that was the last one and we fucking stop it there, God help me. We got another Buddha. If that was the last one, then everything's good, otherwise it's not. And it's like, you know what, like, Matt, are you gonna live your life? Because here it's like, well, what do you even mean by that? Well, often, actually, prior to that, I would often be thinking of, like, spiritually or something. Like, if that was the last one, then spiritually speaking, like, you know, we're on a good track for enlightenment or whatever. And I just, like, maybe had a sense of that at points. And I think I have followed things in a way where it has, you know, basically, like, I don't know. I have followed things in a way where you could say that things in some ways have turned out well. But in a lot of ways things have turned out like kind of grotesque. And so, or grotesquely. And so they have turned out to be kind of grotesque. So, in any case, these days it's felt more like, well, you know, things are going to be going well in a relative way or something. Or like that seems to be kind of the dialectic going on. Like going well or not going well. And actually more recently it's been, well, you're not going to get killed by a gang stalker or something if this is like your last stream or whatever. Or like your mom's not going to get killed by a gang stalker who's trying to like send you a message, or like, you know, like some other thing isn't gonna happen. Like that's like, I'll fucking put it plainly there. Maybe it would actually be helpful to put it that way so that people can hear like how serious this shit has seemed to have been. Not that I want to get back into thinking about it, because actually it's, again, like we're doing the Sedona method and it's actually been really nice. But that has sort of, just to be frank, that has sort of been the feeling recently. And I'm not saying that it's like, oh, what did you have any kind, I'm saying like it's been sort of an intuitive thing with this, but whether the intuitive stuff seems valid or not, the concerns about like somebody coming and hurting me are valid. Those are valid. Whether or not the intuitive stuff is valid. So in any case, like last night, like particularly, and I think this was yesterday, it was like, oh, you know, like things will go well in that sense or something, or someone, you know, and last night even it was like someone won't come and fucking like, just like, I'm not saying that it would make sense to anybody necessarily, but just sort of the dichotomy that we're working with, it doesn't seem to be like the spiritual one anymore so much. I think partially I feel pretty good spiritually. Now the dichotomy, or at least, and I think it's just interesting to point out, Like last night, at least, it was like, you know, no, it's the dichotomy would be like you're not gonna get no one's gonna come and like fucking break in your house and then like take you out or like, you know, like do something to your mom at the fucking rehab place that she's in, or like she comes back here and then they do something like even more horrible than it seems like someone might have already done to her. She said she didn't remember what happened, blah blah blah. So what I'm saying is, it's just interesting. I don't even know. I think that was just sort of a fucking a point to make. It's probably time to fucking vacuum again. There are these fleas that they're generally from the cat. Oh yeah, we got a one. I wonder whom it is. Hopefully it's not someone who's gonna come and fucking like murder me or something. Matt, stop talking like that. You're feeling so relaxed at the beginning of this. I know. Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna vacuum, but I'm gonna probably keep the stream going because I'd like to stream for a little longer. But I'm gonna vacuum and then maybe even I don't know. But let's do that because there are fleas from the cat. The cat seems to have been. I think the cat was probably poisoned by somebody. That may sound like an extreme thing to say. It's been extreme for me for a long time in terms of like the way people have treated me. So yeah, I think the cat was probably poisoned, and then so these fleas are just like my extra little bonus benefit. You know, that's sort of sarcastic, but the extra little bonus from that tragedy happening. So yeah, I'll be right back though. Okay. I think it might help for me to do like relaxation streams. Oh boy, got a fucking couple of them. Man, this is fucking brutal. That's fine. See, I was sitting here for a while without them, so generally without them, so yeah. Here's the key with fleas. I'm like literally, I'm actually literally in some sense a professional on this topic because I once, for a little while, well, when I was a professional book editor for pet care books, I'd often be editing kind of like marketing copy about like flea supplies as well. And so often the marketing copy would tell you, it's like there's a life cycle, and basically you gotta kind of catch them like when they're the adults. That's when you see them. Otherwise, like they'll be eggs or like hatchlings or like fucking teenagers or whatever. I don't know, but what you do is you just keep repetitively like vacuuming, like because like they talked about like, oh, it breaks the flea life cycle or whatever. But even if you don't have like, flea poison or whatever, what you do is you repetitively, you just sort of programmatically, repetitively vacuum. And so the vacuum is really your best friend. You want to clear clutter and stuff, but basically wherever you are, it's probably going to be tougher if you've got like carpeting or something, but you just keep vacuuming. And, you vacuum and then you kind of hang out. And then, if it seems like they're coming back, you vacuum again. And it basically is sort of as simple as like, each time you sort of maybe notice them going again, you just vacuum again. And then eventually, without any kind of like cat or pet or something around, they're not going to be able to sustain their own life cycle because they're not going to have enough food. So if you keep vacuuming like every time they appear, and you don't have like a cat or something who's just like carrying them or something, then you're going to be good. Now, if you do have a cat or something, then what you're going to want to do is probably put a flea collar on them or do the flea chemicals or whatever, spot on treatment. And I'm not a fan of those chemicals and stuff, but between that and having fleas, I'm not sure. But if you don't have like a pet, which unfortunately I don't have a pet anymore because it seems like somebody did something. But if you don't have a pet, then it's really just as simple as like, just keep vacuuming over and over again. And as long as you don't like spend a while just getting like bitten by fleas, and like just like not doing anything about it, if you just get up and like vacuum again, it's like, oh, okay, let's do it again. It doesn't have to be long, especially if you're staying in the same place, because you can just kind of cover the same area. And then think about it this way: the other areas, depending on how infrequently you're there, the fleas aren't getting any food over there. So just think about it in terms of getting the new ones and not giving them more food. Getting the new ones and not giving them more food. And eventually they're going to die out. And it could be pretty quick. But at least that's my strategy. That's probably not exactly how like the marketing copy that I would have even been editing exactly said it, but I think that's pretty good. Now, if you have carpeting, that might be a bigger issue. It's easier with hardwood floors. But the strategy doesn't necessarily have to be different. Oh, you know what? Let me. Now, here's the thing. I actually thought of something to talk about, and yeah, Matt, weren't you gonna make a life plan today? I'm looking to do so, but there's a little bit of like an aggressiveness about certain things. So I was thinking, yo, you fucking, okay. I was thinking about like going and getting some tobacco from the other room and smoking. And it's definitely like not without consequences in terms of even just, you have the little tobacco pipe, and then like you smoke the tobacco pipe, but then like maybe some kind of bits of the fucking whatever get through, because you're literally like, you know, breathing in. So it's like, then, you know, maybe no, yep, okay. Hey, now we have a double Buddha. Okay, great. So I was like, okay, but it's a trade-off. Now, I don't think all things are necessarily like big trade-offs. Like this one's probably kind of a trade-off with maybe more on the negative side than other things might be, but it's a trade-off enough. And sometimes it seems like, you know, actually smoking tobacco is, you know, it's worth it. Especially in the circumstances that I've been in, when things, if and hopefully when things get like a lot better for me, then maybe I won't feel like as much of an impetus to be smoking tobacco, because it's like, okay, well, you know, things are going smoothly enough that it's like, you know, doesn't feel like I reach for that. But right now, I think, you know, it might be helpful, or at least I might like to do it. So whatever. Which might be helpful. We got the person slowly creeping by. You see that light go across the wall. Who knows? Anyway, there seems to be an aggressiveness, though, with things sometimes, where it's like, because you're looking for, you know, proverbial like signs from God, or, well, maybe you do well not to look for them. Actually, perhaps I've gotten sort of to the end of it by saying that. But like recently I worked at a hotel, and it seemed like sometimes it'll just seem like, whether or not it's like when you notice something or whatever, it seems like certain things are like kind of aggressive. So it's like, you know, it's like you see the no smoking sign, but it kind of comes off, it feels like a little aggressive, and it almost feels like a sense of like, if you stop smoking tobacco, then things are going to go well for you here. But if you don't, not that I was smoking there, I'm just saying, like, if you stop smoking in general, then you're going to be doing well enough to do this. But if you don't, then whatever. Like, it almost comes through as some kind of message. And you can, you know, you can say whatever you want about the idea of any kind of message like that. But in any case, well, the thing is, if things seem like, basically, if it seems like you've kind of been treated with enough extremity for a long time, like people have been like just like you've been through like some kind of thing like the Ted Gunderson affidavit for a long time, then it starts to feel, because here's the thing, it starts to feel more like the kind of moralizing bullshit of like somebody who's gonna like stalk you and like listen to you in secret and like commit like 1,000 crimes against you, and then they're gonna be like, yeah, but you better not masturbate. It's like, it starts to feel like that. And so it starts to feel like, you know, it's like, oh, you know, like maybe I shouldn't smoke or something, or like, oh. But it's like, well, wait a second. I'm not so sure that I shouldn't. Not because yeah, there may be some kind of trade-off, but I'm just saying, it's if something has enough aggressiveness to it, where basically like somebody or a group of people, or even it might seem like the world is like kind of acting in a violating way towards you enough, and then they're giving you some kind of message about something that does actually seem relatively minor, then it starts to feel like, you know what, I'd err on the side of fucking doing that relatively minor thing, because if somebody's going to be doing all these things to me, and then they're going to seem to like try to give me the message that I need to do something differently, it's like, you know what, maybe I'm not just gonna, you know, open the door for a bunch of reverse psychology and say like, well, now I'm always going to do the thing that it seems like you don't want me to do, because because that would probably be easy enough to work with as well for like someone with bad intentions. But in terms of like smaller things where it seems like, because that's a strange stalking thing. One of the stranger things about the stalking stuff is that people be like, well, I have the sense that like the stalkers, like they get mad when I like fucking watch porn, or they get mad when I like do this or that, and then they so-called punish me for it. And it's like, if there is anything to something like that, if there is some kind of like punishment thing going on, and it's like, well, obviously whatever they've been doing to you is so much more wildly horrible than you like masturbating, or than you like smoking, that it just becomes a comedic thing for any of them to suggest that there's anything that you would ever change in your life. Because guess what, like, it's like, well, how about you guys don't literally fucking watch me while I'm fucking naked in the house that I live in? How about that? Right? So it's like, okay. How about you guys don't fucking follow me around? How about you guys don't do the litany of fucking felonies that if you weren't being paid by some kind of cop somewhere, you would be arrested for and probably sent to jail for years. How about that, right? No, I'm gonna fucking smoke and I'm gonna fucking jerk off, you fucking bitch, right? Like, but in any case, oh boy. And not that I think jerking off is like morally good. Smoking, I think, is a little less fraught. Masturbation, you got the sperm are dying for nothing, right? It's like, or for like you having like the satisfaction of doing that or whatever. It's like, it's not necessarily a morally just nothing issue. But if it's about someone coming around and doing something to send you some kind of message that you're a bad person for doing that, it's like, nope. Oh, hey, look at that. We fucking skipped that. Well, that works. It's like, nope. No, how about every single person who commits felonies against me at all times? How about you all stop? And then I'm already the type of person who would wonder about whether like masturbation is like morally good or not. And I've already actually wondered about it and talked about it. It's like, so if you guys want to be like punishing me for something, how about you fucking clean your own fucking dirty laundry? Like, seriously, it's really hilarious. But I think that might all be like kind of that might be beyond the point of whatever those people are seeking to do with what they do. Not that I'm saying they're seeking to do something righteous. I'm just saying, like, it might just be sort of like, that might just be sort of baked in as some kind of secondary like gaslighting thing that isn't really part of their mission anyway. Because of course, like, what, these people are coming around doing bad things to you so that you do good things. It's like, no, not not when it's between like looking at like a fucking like bikini picture on the internet and doing whatever they do. like I'm pretty sure you guys poisoned my cat. So if you're trying to send me some messages about how I should live, you need to actually get your fucking head examined. It feels nice too, because I've been, oh, hold on. I've been gaslit so long about like being like crazy or something, or like people have just. I think when you're saying something that's both honest enough and well reasoned enough, or if you're saying something honest enough and logical enough, people are probably going to be. They're probably just gonna. For a variety of reasons, they're probably just gonna grab for like some crazy label so that they can just like feel like they won against you without and not that you're even fighting against them, but just they feel, I guess, inadequate. But I've been gaslit so long about being some kind of crazy person, and it feels nice to actually be like, you know what, like like you guys, like there are a certain group of people who are actually like fucking insane. Like they're actually like psychopath. See, psychopath doesn't mean insane. I think psychopath is more of like a moral / conscience thing. And so I think they're psychopaths too, but they're actually like maniacs. And it feels nice to be like, no, actually, like you guys would actually really do well to get your head examined, because then maybe you're not going to be like fucking whatever you guys are fucking doing. Variety of things too. It's funny too, because suddenly all of those like psychological gaslighting terms seem like they have at least a little weight. It's like, and you know what? Maybe they're only gaslighting terms insofar as the people they've been usually applied to. So it's like, oh, like obsession or narcissism or like paranoia or something. Maybe it's just that ironically perhaps, maybe it's just that I've actually been like really not only like fairly physically healthy, but I've been like really, really mentally healthy, and so I've had all these terms like thrown at me, and it's been, after a while it's like, well, it just seems like all these terms are bullshit. But perhaps it's that the terms tend to get thrown at people who like actually don't have the problems, and then perhaps you could look to the people throwing them to see who actually is like paranoid, who's obsessed, who's narcissistic, and who's just delusional. Okay. Nope. Hey, oh, we fucking made it. We made it legitimately. Wait, are we still on the fortunate, like, we actually just skipped something path? That works. Yeah, well, I mean, we're on that part. Fuck, man. Okay. Well, that was our last little, shit. This is a tough part. Off. On. Off. On. Off. On. Off. On. Off. Nope. No! Do we get a game over? Maybe let's say I'm gonna allot myself maybe at least until about an hour for the stream. Because I'd like to try it a little more. Good luck, you're gonna need it. This level isn't that hard though. It's definitely like, there's a challenge. But getting to the end of this level, I don't feel like I'm gonna be like... This level's not that bad. The switch stairs are the toughest part, I think. Nope. Oh my goodness, what a waste. That's okay. Let's see if we can get to the next part, and then I'd like to take another little smoke break. Not that I've even smoked that much. Just like a couple, okay. This one's a really tight one. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That felt like I had all the time in the world. Nope. Now these guys don't seem that intimidating, but if you don't have an Aku Aku, they're basically the same as a spike. Well, they are anyway, because a spike is... It's 1 damage. Okay. Well, but of course, if you're on a spike... Oh, hey, look! Did we get the checkpoint on one attempt here? That's pretty good. Let's see if we can even know. Let's give ourselves the reward that we were gonna... Okay. Fine. Oh shit, I still have soda left. I didn't even fucking realize. Well, great. Fucking whatever. You're drinking soda in the morning, Matt? You're insane. Oh boy. I think it might be fun to do like a relaxation stream or something. That's fun. That's basically what this has been. Let's smoke a little more, and then we can do the next... Start to do the next segment. Oh, Liv is on vacation. Yeah, that's what we're kind of doing here, right? Now here's the thing, like don't get it wrong. If somebody were to say like, Matt, I've got for you a 40-hour-a-week job. Not that this is like my aspiration for my life, but like currently, if somebody were to say, Matt, I've got for you a trade-off. That trade-off is it's a 40-hour-a-week job and you're going to make enough money to live on your own. Maybe it's not like $1 million a year or something, but you're going to make enough money where you're living on your own. and you have enough money for like food, and you're living in like an okay area. It's not like you're going and living somewhere where it's like you might as well be like it doesn't seem worth it. I'd probably say yeah. I'd probably be like, oh yeah, great. Like, just make sure I'm not like working for a defense contractor, or I'm not like, working for a company that specifically like sells meat. I've worked for pizza places before, but it's like, well, not everything is meat, and I'm not preparing the food either, so it's like, it's not necessarily preferable, but whatever. As long as the job was like moral, like ethically sound, like as long as it wasn't breaking Be Honest or Be Good for me, then, and it was like it's gonna be a job where like it's probably gonna be like dedicating yourself to it, but you're gonna have a consistent schedule. Maybe this would be a good amount of things to write down. That's probably a good idea. Like this is a job that I'd like. Not that I aspire to like, oh, I aspire to have like a job, but you're gonna have a consistent schedule. Yeah, let's fucking write this down. This is probably helpful for the life planning actually. So we're kind of being more productive now than maybe I anticipated. Okay, consistent schedule, enough to live on. Well, or at least well enough. Good morals. Consistent schedule, enough to live on, well, and good morals. If somebody were to give me that, then I'd probably be like, yeah. I'd probably be like, okay, like that yeah, well, that sounds like a good enough trade-off for me right now. Not that I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. Like, hopefully I can figure out something, and I think I pretty easily could, that is going to make me probably a lot more money, and it's probably going to be a lot better. But so like live as on vacation. It's not like oh, the aspiration is to kind of be dependent on somebody. But while you're going, you might as well live as on vacation. Actually, I will say, I'd probably even say while you're like at work, if you have some kind of job, you might as well live as on vacation there too, because you can still get done, like you could still accomplish things or like produce results while living as on vacation. You'll probably do better. And so how nice is it to relax in a morning rather than stressing out? And that even goes if like you have like real seeming circumstances around you. It's like, look, like live as on vacation anyway. Things are probably going to go better for you anyway. Even like in a law of attraction sense, almost certainly. If you're doing fine. But even without the law of attraction stuff, you could still say like, well, I don't know, you might as well like be having a better time along the way. And then you're probably going to be more effective. Again, even without the law of attraction stuff, then you're probably going to be more effective with whatever you do anyway. So, yeah. I think it's a good idea. Oh, you fucking cocksucker, what? You what? Oh my god, I don't know. What just happened? I pressed the start button. It said resume. What? what even happened there? Oh well, that's fine. We can do it again. We did it on one life before. Let's test it. That's a shame though. You know what? Because that happened, this may sound like a big excuse, but the understanding I had was that I was about to play the next segment of the level. Given that that happened, I think I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway here to have a little more of a smoke break before we do that again. See, situation changed. The agreement, that the understanding that I had is no longer how things were. Now you could say, well, Matt, it was you who like went back to the menu. I'm not sure how that happened though. So, whatever. I think I might have like had a different button pressed down at the same time. I'm not even sure what it was. It might have been like R1 or maybe even like circle. But okay, hold on. Let's but if you feel like kind of threatened or sort of like backed into a corner, that's especially the time to relax. Because once you feel like you're starting to scramble and stuff, you might get into sort of like a little loop of behavior where now you're just in a scrambling pattern, and you don't want to be in a you don't want to be in a scrambling pattern. Just simply for effectiveness. Nope. Darn it. I can't believe it. That's okay. We don't really need the Buddha on the way up. Buddhas are helpful maybe on that second section a little more. Yep. It looks like we're on track to get the embryo area as well, which is probably going to be helpful. Good. Yeah. For that one, you do a shallow jump. Don't worry about that box of Wumpa fruit. A, there's not a lot of Wumpa fruit in this level. B, the platform will probably push you off. And C, here you go. So that first section isn't too hard. And now, let's take the appointed smoke break, but again. See, you want to be fair with yourself. Like if you were going to give yourself like some kind of leeway, you kind of want to follow through with it. Because if you start sort of retracting from yourself like little chances to breathe and like whatever, then you might get more into a pattern of like that happening even more than that. It's kind of just about treating yourself well. I'd recommend picking up some like magical techniques. That can be helpful. Even if it just comes off as like psychosomatic, either way. A little bit of Damien Eccles, just sort of get conversant with that stuff. And then you can kind of go from there. Robert Bruce energy work, that's helpful. That's actually a nice little door because once you see how malleable it can be, then you can kind of like have your own sort of techniques that you can just sort of snap your fingers and apply. Now here's the thing, if you give yourself like a little deal or something, you probably want to follow through with the deal. In terms of like, okay, I wouldn't even necessarily, I wouldn't even necessarily suggest to, yeah. Oh, we got a Buddha Booga, thank goodness. I wouldn't suggest to like, I don't know. You don't want to be punishing with yourself. You don't want to be like in this habit of like punishing yourself even subtly. There's a good phrase from the Illustrated RPG Life, which is essentially included in the RPG Life extravaganza, where it says, I'm relaxed, I'm win. If you're legitimately relaxed, you're kind of winning. And nobody else even has to be losing. What I'd suggest, though, actually I'd really suggest this, is be honest and be good. Those are really like your guidelines and your guardrails. Because there are many people who like seem to come off as relaxed. I'll give you an example, actually. My uncle, I had an uncle who, like years ago, there was some kind of, I was at his house and there was some kind of thing that like I had been on his computer and then like something appeared to have gone wrong. I don't know what it was, but it was just like some kind of error or something. And when I was younger, my dad would like if there was some kind of error on the computer or something, like I think my dad like had a lot of overwhelm, and so he'd kind of like, you know, he'd have sort of like an outsized reaction sometimes to things like that. And I remember like kind of worrying that my uncle was gonna like get mad or something, but he just sort of like, he was like, okay, and then like he went over to the computer and like I think he fixed it or whatever, and like it didn't come off as like any kind of big situation. And I remember thinking like, oh, you know what, like that's like, wow, like, not that suddenly it's like, oh, you're better than my dad or like anything like that, but I remember thinking like, oh wow, like that's sort of like different from what I expected. However, and I'm not looking to criticize him either, because he's, you know, my uncle, because he's been like very, very helpful and supportive in many ways. But whereas he did seem to keep like, you know, it didn't seem like to be a big issue for him. What I would say about him, and what I'd say about like how I'd want to sort of give myself a guardrail here, is that I don't think that he's as big of like necessarily an honesty guy, or even necessarily like a quote unquote good guy. And not that not that I'm saying like there is no good. I'm just saying like I don't think he was as like strict probably about honesty or about goodness as my dad probably was. Um, but if you can be relaxed, and then you can give yourself the guardrails of honesty and goodness, where it's like, no, I'm going to be honest because, well, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to be good, and you can be relaxed, then I think you're really hitting it on both sides. I don't know, all sides. Now, interestingly, and I'll give you a little interesting note here. I don't even know if I really thought about this, but I think my dad is kind of an art guy. Like, I think my dad is, he doesn't really come off like it, but I think he is or was. I don't know. I haven't seen him or whatever for a long time. I don't know. But I think he was like a big, sort of a big art guy. Like looking back on it, like he'd be watching like David Lynch stuff. He'd be like reading books sometimes. He told me one time, like driving in the car, he's like, well, like people say that Stephen King isn't like that good of a writer or something, but like I think he actually is like, one whatever. Like he actually has done like really good books or whatever. Or he is one of the like best writers in America or whatever. And I don't think that my uncle would be having that discussion. Like, in fact, I once heard someone else say, not that means it's true, but I once heard someone say like that my uncle had said one time like, oh, like, or he doesn't think that there's any value to art at all. Perhaps that's not disconnected to the sense that like it doesn't necessarily seem like he was like super devoted to honesty or goodness. Not that it seemed like he was going around being dishonest, or that it seemed like he was doing a bunch of bad things, but maybe one of the fruits of like honesty or goodness is that then you look at something like Mulholland Drive by David Lynch, or Twin Peaks, or you look at like even some of the Stephen King novels, and you might really get something out of them. Whereas otherwise, you might like things might become a little shallow, and yeah, you might get some like good success and stuff. You might get a lot of money or whatever, but then you might be sort of likely to just kind of watch like whatever slop on TV. I don't want to be insulting my uncle, or like, I'm just saying like you might be more likely to be like, oh yeah, like let's watch like the Boston Fire or Boston PD or Chicago or whatever, or let's watch Jeopardy or something, or and like it's like, oh, like I'm not really interested in if like in the context of like watching things, like, oh, I'm not really interested in watching something that seems like kind of highbrow or whatever. But there's a lot of good stuff with that highbrow stuff. And if you're going to be watching something anyway, it's like, maybe it's the dichotomy between my dad and my uncle. Isn't that insane? Could be. Could be the dichotomy between like being maybe honest and good, like it seems like my dad, at least a little more might have been devoted to, and between being like, having a sense of like, okay, we're gonna be like a little more maybe a little more practical, but like have less undergirdings of Maybe more like value-based stuff. And that sounds like I'm saying some kind of moderation thing, and it's like be a little value-based or whatever. I'm saying be totally honest. I'm saying be good. But if you can relax along the way, then that might sort of be what brings everything together perfectly. And I don't know. It might sound self-serving to point this out, but shit, darn it, Palapalapaya. Yeah, there we go. Might seem self-serving to point this out, but like, look at me like going through this fucking crash level. This is, this is showing some skill. This is showing some level of like, this is a game where it's kind of demanding stuff going on. And if I can be sort of like floating through it and like doing well enough, then that might say a lot about how well I'm doing. Not that beating a level of Crash Bandicoot is going to have many definite results for you that are direct results, but it's sort of a good test of like, like if somebody was totally just off base, I don't think they'd be like doing this shit very well. Oh, darn it. Let's try. Okay. Let's take this a little more carefully. On, off. On. Good. That was close. Now we got the double Buddha. As long as we can make all our jumps here, we're pretty good. Yup, 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 yup. There we go. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Kind of nice. This is just a little anecdote, but I had a girlfriend in college, and I went to her house. I think I had gone to her house like maybe a couple of times. Maybe it was just the one time that I went to her house. I don't even know, but I remember that her maybe it was just once. I remember that like her parents had like the Crying of Lot 49 or whatever. It was just like hanging around in like a bookcase somewhere by Thomas Pynchon. And I think I've mentioned it to her. I was like, "Oh wow, like oh yeah, like your parents they just have like that Thomas Pynchon book just like sitting there over there." He's like a fairly highbrow writer. He has like maybe more famous books like, well, that's a fairly famous one, but then you have Gravity's Rainbow. I don't know how many books of his have been turned into movies. Oh, you know what? Inherent Vice. That was Pynchon, right? That was Pynchon, not Philip K. Dick. Inherent Vice. Paul Thomas Anderson, and that was sort of a highbrow movie. Joaquin Phoenix, etc. But I was like, oh yeah, like oh wow, like that's kind of impressive or whatever. Or, sort of had that sense. Like, oh yeah, wow, like whatever, like oh cool, they have that book out, and she's like, yeah, my parents aren't idiots, and it's like, I like that. That was great. She's like, they're not idiots. And what do you know? She was smart too. It's like, what books did my dad have around? Well, it wasn't just Stephen King either. Like he had Roger's version by John Updike, like sitting in a bookshelf. Like, like he had a little more highbrow stuff as well. He had like some Stanley Kubrick movies and stuff. I had borrowed 2001: A Space Odyssey from him, and then I just like I had never brought it back. But then like later I bought him like for his birthday or something. I bought like a Kubrick Blu-ray collection that had that, thinking like I never gave him that 2001 back, so here's a Blu-ray of it. And he had like Apocalypse Now, and that's a more popular movie, but it's still highbrow. Not that 2001 isn't popular. But I don't know how many people are just going to be like, oh yeah, like let's watch 2001: A Space Odyssey. Because that's really highbrow. 2001 is like super fucking, it's highbrow. It may be well known, but yeah, you don't get much more highbrow than Kubrick. I mean, you don't get much better than Kubrick. Kubrick is great. Yeah, he's probably super occult and like probably like whatever, but he's awesome. Yeah. Shit, man. Oh, but this is it. Yeah. Okay. So we did the same little accidental shortcut. Yeah. Okay. And look, we can get Wumpa fruit. Now think of it this way too, because I think it's very interesting. I'm not going to say that there's much validity to like patterns. Well, maybe patterns with it, but my dad was definitely more like a conservative guy, whereas my uncle definitely like not. And I think there's a lot of highbrowness with like conservatism, or with like people who tend to like be more on the conservative side, that I think a lot of people just don't acknowledge. And so you could have like all the money in the world and be like Libby, but I don't know really how. Maybe there's not much of a connection, but I don't know how like highbrow you're going to be getting with like what you're looking at and stuff, like with how like intellectual it is, how much like you're sort of like thinking about like, oh, like, you're really getting a kick out of like all the subtle meanings and whatever. I don't know how much you're gonna get that if like you're like super like Libby and you're kind of taking your or you're basically like going along with like what they say on like most mainstream media in that regard. It's funny because I think people look at like the Libby people as like the more intellectual, like artsy, like, oh, we're watching highbrow stuff. I think a better description of the Libby people might be more like, let's go watch some bad movies, quote unquote. And they might say it in sort of like a cheeky, like, oh, yeah, it's just, let's watch some like bad TV or bad movies. But whether or not they seem to have some kind of like feigned awareness of it or whatever, or even like whatever, that's still what they're watching, right? I don't know. Because here's the thing, whether or not your average like Libby people are going to be like watching like highbrow or lowbrow stuff, I doubt that most of your conservative people are going to be like, oh, let's go watch some like bad movies or something. I don't really think they're going to like have that kind of cheeky statement about like going and like, you know, spending your time watching 2.5 Men. Now, they might be watching something like 2.5 Men, but in that case, I doubt they're doing it as some kind of like ironic thing. And perhaps it's sort of a sense of like living your life in some kind of ironic way where it's sort of, it feels like it's sort of intentionally inverted versus not. And then a lot of them, it's not even seemingly like intentionally inverted or like that. Like, it seems like that's just kind of what they watch. I don't want to put them down for it either, but to them I'd say like there is like a lot of really interesting stuff out there. What if it turned out that all these like seemingly like super Libby, like highbrow, like, you know, artsy movies, like most of the people going to those theaters were actually like conservatives, and so all these movies were seemingly like talking down to them, but like the people actually in the seats and enjoying them are like, oh yeah, well, you're getting your little propaganda here, but I'd still rather like watch this like intellectual movie. So really they're talking down to the audience that is like ready for something like that, and in that case it's like I don't know. Maybe there's a yin yang there, because then it seems like a lot of the trashier stuff often comes off as like maybe slightly more culturally conservative. Like the fucking Boston PD or Chicago fire or whatever, where it's like a bunch of people, it's like, whatever. It's like, oh, you know, we respect the cops. And what if it turned out that like the Libby people really were like the big fans of the cops the whole time, and the like the conservative people really were like sort of the like the I don't like this kind of totalitarian bullshit. It's like it's just this crazy yin yang all the way down. There we go. Great. Yeah, and now we have the Buddha to help us there. Okay. And we didn't need, well, we did, I was going to say we didn't need it. Well, we used it. Okay. And we got a fucking, oh no, we got a new crash. We didn't get a Buddha. Crap. Okay, we didn't get a Buddha, we got a crash, yeah. Okay. Nope. Goodness. And it's like, well, your girlfriend's parents, were they more Libby or were they more conservative? I don't even know. But her, shit, really? Her brother's name was Winston. And I don't know if he was named after the cigarettes. I think he might have been named after the character in 1984. And if he was, then they were probably like somewhat like anti-authoritarian people. And it's so funny because like, what if it turns out that the Libby people actually like they come off as like anti-authoritarian styled, but they were actually the authoritarian people the whole time. It's funny too, because I have like a Libby seeming uncle, and he like once literally told me, like, I am an authoritarian. And of course then, shit, then of course you really do get that with all the like the anti-free speech stuff, where it's like, well, you're not allowed to say something that's not politically correct. What side is that on? Well, it would seem, whatever side it's on, it would seem to be on the authoritarian one. Shit. Oh well. Maybe we can try like one more life cycle for this, and then I'm probably just gonna move on to whatever else for the rest of the day. What am I feeling right now? Could I welcome that feeling? Oh. Yeah, now we get into the you know, but whatever. Oh, there's a beautiful little scene. I talked about this movie recently. One of my favorite little parts of this movie, and it was right near the end, but I won't say like exactly the context. But the movie The Hunt. I'm not gonna say The Hunt was like a great movie, but I think The Hunt was pretty good, and it's certainly like pretty entertaining. But there's a moment near the end where you're like badass woman. It's actually kind of funny too, because the movie comes off as fairly conservative. It's talking about like it's literally a movie where like the liberal elites, and they do use terms like that, are like hunting a bunch of like redneck conservative types for sport. And your hero of the movie it's actually a woman. Yin yang, right? Because you think, oh, the conservatives are the people who don't want the girl bosses or whatever, and blah blah blah. But she's pretty good. Like I think I'm not even sure whom the actress is. And again, actresses in Hollywood, who knows who's legit? But she's captivating kind of throughout the movie. Like she does come off as like, whether or not she'd actually be like beating people up or whatever, she does come off as like she is like a strong person. And towards the end of the movie, she's talking to some guy, and I ended up like rewinding it and watching it again. The volume was a little low, and so I wasn't sure what she was saying, and I still wasn't quite sure what she was saying. But she said something like, you know, like my life is like, or she's like, but I you know, like what I want is like, like she makes like a sound a couple of times, and I'd suggest watching that movie, if only for that scene. If only for that scene, and then also her last line in the whole movie. It's really beautiful stuff. I'm still not exactly maybe sure what she means, but it feels like there's something there. And what it really feels like is someone being sincere. And that's worth all the money in the world. Someone actually being sincere. When's the last time you had an interaction with someone and it seemed like they were actually like coming from like one of the deepest places? So yeah, recommendation. It's pretty good. You're gonna have a good time. And you might say, well, Matt, what about all the Libby people in like a Stephen King novel, Hearts in Atlantis in particular? What about all the Libby people who are like they're Libbier, or they seem to be turning more Libby, and they're doing all like the protest stuff in the 1960s? What about them? Aren't they anti-authoritarian? What I would say to you is, I think a lot of those people, not that the Vietnam War or something was like a good thing. So like all the so-called conservative people back then who were like, we need to go to Vietnam. I'm not saying those people were right, but I don't know if those people were really like that's culturally or personally conservative either. I think what the Libby people did, including the uncle who literally said like, I'm an authoritarian to me, he was one of the Berkeley guys, and he would often talk about it like, oh, I was one of the people at Berkeley in like the 70s or whatever. Was it the 70s? Maybe the late 70s for him, I don't know, but might have been the late 60s, I don't know. Like he was one of the Berkeley era, like the big Berkeley era, like Libby college kids, or he presented himself that way. And I think those people were just, essentially, they were just buying a line of propaganda. And what they were doing, like, it was presented to them. Similarly to how today, like, the anti-Trump stuff, I'm not saying Trump's good either. But I'm saying, like, similarly to how the anti-Trump people today are presented as, like, oh, we're the modern hippies and we're going against the man and stuff. It's like, yeah, but you're not going against the man because you're buying... Perhaps you are so far removed from like going against the man that the man has put an extra layer of like anti-man stuff that's not actually anti-man. I don't mean man as in male. I mean like the man, like anti-authoritarian. You're going along with a lot of basically faux anti-authoritarian stuff that's been given to you by the authoritarians to make you feel authoritarian while you promote the next level of authoritarianism that they're implementing with these seemingly anti-authoritarian cultural changes. Whereas the so-called like conservatives in the room, they may still be totally deluded and they may be going along with something like the Vietnam War or the Iraq War. And so in that sense, I would say they're not really right on. But to think that you're actually being some kind of rebel by just kind of going along with the other part of the crowd who's saying like, all this is bad, but they're literally getting that kind of messaging from like a lot of, probably from most of the people on TV who are telling them this is how to fight the man. They're not fighting the man at all. And they don't even realize it. You could say that the Libby people are about appearances, and to some extent, and then the conservative people are about reality to some extent. And if you're on the side of appearances rather than on the side of reality or on the side of truth, then you're gonna be fooled every time, or you're likely to be. And then you're probably going to look like more of a fool, because at least the people who are fooled but they're like, oh yeah, like I like Vietnam, or the Vietnam War, like oh yeah, like we need to go to Iraq or whatever. It's like at least there's some sincerity there, where it's like they're not pretending to not be authoritarian. Like at least they're not sort of like following some kind of pretend version of an ideal that they're not actually following. It's like what they're following basically is authoritarianism. And if they're being honest enough to follow that, then maybe they'll be honest enough someday to break out of it. But if you're not honest enough to see through the bullshit anti-authoritarianism for the lie that it is, then you're probably never, at least while you're in that pattern, going to actually be going against authoritarianism at all. You're just going to be going for a more subtle version of it that you've been fooled into. So, you know, the conservatives are closer to breaking out of that, seemingly to me. Well, that sounded very conservative of you, man. That burp. Oh, boy. Well, you know what? That's funny, though, because wouldn't that be a sense of, like, kind of a lack of too much concern or a lack of that much concern over appearances? And of course, then you get the libbiness where it's like, well, yeah, you know, we like the system, or we like, you know, whatever, like, we like all the authoritarian stuff, but we're going to be the people who are going to be like, yeah, but don't follow the law to the letter, like, you know. And it's like, look, I've talked about this before, but it's good to bring up again. If you're not following the law to the letter, I'm not saying the law is good, but if you think the law is like somewhat good, but then you're not following it to the letter, what you're really doing is you're just kind of existing in this gap where it's kind of beyond the law. And what it is that you're probably, like, if you don't like the way the laws are, if you're just consistently sort of saying, like, yeah, but we're not going to really follow the laws, but, like, they should be there, then you're not even interacting with the thing that you don't even seem to like in the first place. So you haven't even gotten to the point where you're, like, criticizing the thing itself. It's like, well, we're just, like, of course you just let it slide, or of course you just let it slip, or of course you just park facing the wrong way on the side of the road, or of course you just park in the lawn, or of course you just, like, let this slip and let that slip and let that slip and let that slip. And when you let almost everything slip, then you just don't have any standards, or at least it's like you're not looking at anything closely enough that you're probably really ever going to do anything about what's already there and what's already problematic, because you're not even looking at it. You're just like, yeah, let's let it slip. It's like, if you're going to have a set of laws, how about, or you're going to have a set of rules or something, because I'm not a monopoly on force guy, how about you have them work well in the first place? And if they're not working well in the first place, the solution is not to kind of ignore them and half follow them. Because you know what you get with that? You get people not being consistently punished by these laws that you yourself are then kind of not following, but then the parts of the laws that you might not like, those are still in effect. And so it's really just like bad on both sides and almost no chance for anything to change. As long as you're looking the other way, you're not watching what's happening. Nope. Yup. Oh, fucking cocksucker. And these are the same people who are like, respect women, but then they're also like, well, yeah, but, you know, it's only like right for a woman to be like, you know, used and brutalized by like any given string of guys that she's going out with, because that's what she wants to do. It's like, I don't think that is what she wants to do. I think that that's sort of what she's culturally been given, and then everyone's been hypnotized into like, well, always like respect a woman's choices or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but she's being given like an abusive scenario, and then instead of looking at that cultural abuse of like her sleeping with 1,000 guys and probably half of them like fucking her in the ass and stuff, instead you're like, just go with whatever she wants. But of course, what she wants doesn't necessarily enter into what she feels like she's been given culturally, and then she's just sort of making the best of a bad situation. But if you're looking at like what would actually be good for everybody, then you're probably not gonna be like just sort of openly blanket supporting like whatever kind of fucking abuse that she's going through, because this is what a woman does in the modern era. And you're probably not going to be like referring to her casually as like a bitch, which is a very Libby thing to do. Oh, my bitch is here. Oh, I'm going to get some bitches. It's like, conservatives aren't saying shit like that. And they do fucking respect women. Oh, goodness. Okay, let's see if we can make it on this last fucking life. Otherwise, maybe I'll smoke a little more, and then that'll be the end of this maybe stream, more or less. But they get you twisted up in these knots where it's like, the people over here are giving this messaging, the people over here are giving that messaging. And if you go with the messaging rather than what actually is, then you're just going to be caught in some kind of like headlock, and it's going to be self-contradictory. And until you start to like identify the contradictions, you're probably going to stay trapped in that, thinking that you're doing the best you can. No, you're doing you're doing exactly what was laid out for you in exactly the kind of trap that they have made for you. Oh, okay, whatever. Whatever, that's fine. We're gonna say yes, but just so we can get like a silence on the pause screen, and I'm just gonna hang out for a bit. And that'll probably be it for this one. And to go back to it, if you have, this is back way earlier, but if you have some people who seem to be doing like threatening stuff around you, and like it does seem to, it's like a group of people like doing, maybe it's a bunch of people like doing kind of creepy stuff around you. If you let yourself get caught up in the fear, and then you let yourself like get caught up in hoping to make a bunch of symbolic gestures that'll like, oh, but if I do this, then everything's going to be okay, or like you're just sort of hoping, like kind of crossing your fingers, but you're sort of in this cycle of fear about it, then you're probably just going to be scrambling and panicking, and then you're not going to be doing what you'd like to do, such as perhaps a stream this morning, nearly as much as you'd like along the way, while continuing to stay in this sort of cycle of panicking that makes it less likely that you're going to kind of chart your way out of whatever scary situation you might have been in. So don't go for symbolic representations, maybe. I like symbolism. It can be interesting in like literature and whatever, but if you're looking to go for like symbolic representations and like hoping that like oh, it'll work out because I did this and blah blah blah, Do what you like to do. Go along like that. Do what you like to do all along the way and relax. Not in some kind of demeaning way, because that's probably most of the ways that you hear someone say relax. I mean, like, actually, like, live in a good state of relaxation. But be honest and be good. Oh no, but I might look bad because if I'm playing Crash Bandicoot and I haven't gotten a new job yet and other things seem to like maybe be tenuous or something, then like that's not good. It's like, yeah, you might look bad, but you're probably going to ultimately get better results throughout the day doing that. And then maybe it's like, okay, now I'm going to go and do this, and like let's see what we can work together practically here. If you play a little Crash Bandicoot in the morning, the rest of your day might work out better as well. What is my now feeling about having a good day going forward? Eh. Whew. Could I welcome that feeling? Could I let it go? Oh. When? Actually, perhaps, like, maybe a good point to end on. I think another thing that you find with, like, Libby people versus conservative, whereas sort of the yoga stuff and even, like, the mindfulness, like, sort of there's a lot of spirituality where it, like, comes off as more culturally left-wing. But on the ground, with the people I see, it seems like, well, most of the people I've been around, they have been mostly Libby, and most of them, it doesn't seem like they have much concern for like spiritual stuff at all. Seems like they might have some concern for like appearances, for like looking spiritual, or not that they think they're just going for it to look spiritual, but they might have like some sense of like, they talk about in spiritual ways or whatever. But in terms of like actually like kind of caring about it and like really getting deep into like whatever it is, I think it's kind of conservatism all the way for that. And so then you see a lot of them being like hardcore like Christians and stuff. And I think in that sense maybe they're just caught in like the headlock on the other side of it, where they like maybe they haven't gone hardcorely and deeply enough. But at least they're doing something hardcore and something deep, rather than like buying a few books, kind of, oh, how fun it is to talk about Carlos Castaneda, but then otherwise your life just looks like just kind of a mundane thing where you're really not doing any kind of spiritual stuff at all. And those are the people who will tell you, oh, are you, you're having a tough time emotionally or something? Oh, just go take some pills.